Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a podcast where we pin meandering conversations to big ideas.
Oh, I like it.
I just made that up. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
What are we talking about this week?
Today we have decided to tackle trust.
Trust. In the wake of last week's conversation about truth, I realised in the week that we hadn't even touched the subject of lying or dishonesty. But I thought, maybe we hang it on this trust banner because, I have some big thoughts about it. I think trust is the fifth law of physics.
Wow. The fifth law of physics.
That's that stoned idea I came up with a few years back.
Trust is important in a work context. There's something around earning trust. There's something about giving trust until it is proven to be wrong. There's the feeling you get when you trusted somebody or something and then find yourself to have been mistaken.
Betrayal.
Is that what it is?
Trust is a decision ultimately based considering that we can't ever know the inside of someone else's mind, and just the nature of lying and the fact that and how people can sort of construct a reality by just saying stuff. Shall we go for it?
There's actually lots in this.
Yeah, I think it's a deep subject. Okay, let's go. Trusty McTrustington.
Trusty McTrustington. Like it.
Well,
yes.
What do we think about? Okay, so we could come in, leading in from last week, I think, where we were talking about truth, and then I was thinking about this weird post-truth concept, and is there such a thing, or is it just you lie about stuff and there appear to be no consequences? So Trump's constructed reality gets more and more. The more he says, the more kind of convoluted this constructed reality comes. And there's lots of lying, isn't it? But I never think of someone as lying to me. And I'm not someone that's really into lying because it's too much work. It's too much to remember, and I can't remember what I said to people.
Yeah, I think it's something not being true isn't necessarily a lie. So there is a difference.
No, but when you're deliberately saying something untrue is something different to knowing, the knowability of truth. And it's like if you can believe something that's not true, but if you know you're lying, then it's definitely not true. But yeah, there's the sort of human element to that I think we just didn't unpack at all, did we?
No, we didn't. We didn't talk about lying at all. We didn't talk about sort of lying but by omission as well. It's like simply not telling people about a thing. For me, on the subject of truth, trust and lying, I operate in a world where I genuinely believe that most people are approaching life with the best of intentions until I become disappointed or they prove otherwise. I think I find it quite annoying when people lie to me because I have quite a good memory. Don't lie to me because I remember what you told me last time, and I remember. So I don't think I particularly lie. I might omit to say something, especially because there's also this thing of over accuracy, which sounds a bit fun. Sounds a bit like, well, there's the truth, and there's a bit of the truth, and not too much truth. But if you're telling a good story, you don't really need all the details.
Yeah,
and sometimes
true,
skipping a few steps makes it funnier. Or makes it more illustrative. And the reality is, if we want to deep delve into the, like last time we talked about the fact that we can never truly know that anything is true. Well, we can't really know that any of our memories are true.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole thing about how we remember things and how in the telling we can almost sort of manufacture memories.
Yeah.
So there's more and more science that proves that sort of this idea of an eyewitness is actually
bit mental.
Rubbish.
Yeah, wrong.
It's totally wrong because a lot of people might be not telling the truth but not deliberately lying.
Yeah, or they might, that you can believe what you're saying, even though you're, completely
You're lying.
it's not actually true or didn't actually happen. Yeah, because of the way memory works, and we're wind-zipping things in our brains in order to,
Yeah.
be able to get back to them. So stories are wind-zip for the brain. It's probably like a reference that loads of people won't get anymore, isn't it?
Such an old reference.
Yeah.
There's also this thing I've just written down, blagging.
Blagging.
And there's a thing like when you're presenting to a big audience or when you're doing something and you're very nervous, you are basically, you put on a persona which could be deemed as lying. Pretending not to be nervous is lying about the fact that you're nervous, or is it? Or, when you apply for a new job, I'd argue, certainly if you're sort of on that career laddery job application front, which I'm not on at the moment, I'm just doing jobs I enjoy. But if you're going for promotions and upgrades to your job, if you're not punching slightly higher than you feel you're necessarily capable of, then what's the point? So, are you lying about what you're able to do? Are you exaggerating? What do you know?
Yeah, you have to. You sort of have to say, yes, I know how to make that. And then just assume that you sort of got to have some faith and trust in yourself, haven't you? That you'll figure it out. And then that if you sort of have to trust yourself before other people can trust you, I think. And then part of that is, if you can, I trust myself that I can do something that I feel a bit nervous about now. Therefore, and I'm just going to kind of like project that. Is that lying, or is it making a promise?
On the subject of making a promise, though, with my child, I deliberately never say I only say I promise to something I know I can do. So that there's because I'm sort of trying to get her, because there's an interest, small children trust you. That's just like, she will launch herself up. Yeah, she still does. She'll launch herself off something without going, "Mummy, are you ready to catch me?" She's just like, "Boo!" You're like, "Oh, you mustn't do that. I might not have noticed." But there's this absolute trust that everything you do is going to be, that you're going to protect them.
No,
and then
that's
because
making me feel really, 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 really sad.
I'm sorry.
As someone who was betrayed at that age, and anyway, but go on. Sorry, I don't know whether that was kind to inject that in, but I'm just like, it's an insight. Childish trust is, it's just you come in, I guess, just assuming the best, don't you? And I think that's a good way to be. But
then the sort of like extension of that, though, is that then as a grown up, when I going back to therapy, when I am betrayed by people who I trust or situations I trust, then I feel childish and naive and stupid for not being more savvy.
I feel angry AF. I go flipping ballistic. Like, no.
Like you said at the beginning, you said you can't truly ever know what's going on in somebody else's head. So it is a decision. It's like, I choose to trust you. There's no other, and you can the people around them, both in a personal and in a work scenario, people can be building up trust points, by delivering on their promises, doing what they said they would do, turning up to work on time, whatever. But you never really know.
When trust isn't necessarily an option, when you don't have a chance to get to know someone well, that's why you need contracts and like money as well. So in a sort of barter society, you do something for someone, they do something for you, and you kind of just remember. But when you're not going to see that person ever again, or when, you kind of formalize that trust relationship in, money in an everyday way, and then in contracts for, you with a company, or you with, someone that's has a different level of power to you, I suppose, as well. The difference between a contract and a trust relationship is that the contract has to try and think of every single possible way that the contract is, here's a list of things that you, here's a list of the boundaries of this agreement, that if you just could think of something that was still within those boundaries but actually betrayed the spirit of the trust, you would might not feel bad about doing that. Whereas if someone just says, look, I'm trusting you to do the right thing, I'm not going to give you a list of what you can and can't do, I just trust your judgment, that's a very different thing. And I you know, I kind of wish the world could run a bit more on that, because it's like I said before, like, whereas law kind of encourages people to kind of push into the boundaries and try and find exploitations, trust means that it's all more about being towards that centre and being a good, doing the right thing and finding ways to do the right thing rather than finding ways to do the wrong thing.
Yeah. I think with the contracts thing, you know, it's no guarantee of anything.
No.
It's just, it's a kind of a more open list of, maybe it's a better definition of what you consider to be the right thing. So, you know, it's like, the thing it makes me think of in the personal relationship sphere is getting married.
Yeah.
I was always like, well, getting married, what a load of nonsense. Who needs a piece of paper? La, 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 la. But actually, I really enjoyed getting married. I thought it was a really special moment. It wasn't, it was a very short ceremony in the local registry office with a few family members present and a couple of friends, literally. But standing up in front of people you love, going, I promise that I'm going to do everything I can to try really, really hard to stay with you forever, is actually felt quite. It felt it felt important to do that, and it felt, and I was surprised at how much I felt that it was important and how much it was a nice thing to do. It was.
What does the marriage contract look like? Is there much to it, or is it all more about the vows? Is it like, is it more about the fact that you've stood up in front of a load of people and set what your promises to each other? That's got more weight than, like, you don't have, like, you don't sort of argue over the points in the contract. They're sort of like independent things, or is it quite just like, it's like a really bare bones, like, marriage? You are married now. Like, well,
I think it's we went for the simplest ceremony, in a simplest secular ceremony. So it's like sickness and in health, no cheating, basically, and that's you sign your marriage certificate, but you're not really signing a contract. You have to go and see the registrar ahead of time and promise you're not lying about anything.
Right.
But it's very straightforward. But I think it's the standing up and promising in front of witnesses.
Well, I like that, because that's a lot more. It's much more human, and it's much more kind of timeless than a sort of paper contract. And I guess those are the things that feel more powerful, aren't they? The things that really you've got all your.
Yeah, I think it is, and it's like, and in a weirdly jumping completely the opposite end. I was talking to somebody, because I do a lot of digital transformation projects.
Okay.
A very popular set of words, but going in places with old tech and trying to upgrade them a bit. A lot of it is just really boring grunt work. Going in, saying you're going to do a thing, doing the thing, shipping the thing, making new software that works better. And then, there's a bit of highfalutin strategic thinking, but there is a lot of trust earning.
Right, yeah.
And the only way in that context, when you're going into an organisation and going, right, we're going to put in this new system, more people are going to do stuff online, we're not going to need as many people answering the phone, going around to people's houses, talking human to human. We're basically replacing you, or at least shifting your work away from what used to be, rekeying forms into actually spending more time talking to humans. So yes, your job's going to change, it might disappear. By the way, trust us, everything's going to be all right, and we are going to be able to build a system that delivers the same but probably better service for the people using it than what you're already doing. And people argue, they get and weirdly, the closer you get to delivering, the more crazy people become and do weird shit. But it's like, but the only way you get to do it is by doing small things really well. On the
Right.
one that you're going to go, yeah, look, we made this website better. You know, we made this form better. We got rid of these 5 questions because we don't need them. And there's no other way. It's just slog. Yeah. So you do, like, you know, working on projects like, I don't know, road tax, renewing your car road tax online, stuff like that. Those are really nice, efficient online forms. But there's a lot of change work behind that. Not that I was involved in that particular project, but it's like, you've got to have that, ooh, rah, 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 we're going to make something amazing, and then just keep delivering on promises. Well, in our own friendship, you accusing me once of being flaky because I miss, you know, I kept arranging to see you, and then 2 or 3 times I move it. You're just really flaky. Now, one of my big things with you and with our friendship is if I tell you I'm going to meet you or turn up to a thing, then it has to be really dire for me to not do it, because I don't want to be your flaky friend.
It's making this podcast possible. That's certainly.
Yeah, that's what it is.
There's that sort of sad thing when you realise that you can trust someone to be flaky. But it just means that when, like, if they're talking to you, they, not you, if they're telling you something, that they want to do something, you're just kind of going, well, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be, you know, stay friends with someone.
But that ties back into truth, and also how much effort you want to invest. It's a terribly formal word, but how much effort do you want to invest in the relationship? Like, you bothered to tell me that I pissed you off. Which made me, and in that moment, I could either go, well, fuck it, I don't care, or I don't want to upset Michael because I like Michael and he's my friend, so therefore I'm going to try and be better. But, you know, if it had been somebody else that I cared about less, I might have just been offended and stormed off into the distance. You know, the subject of my brother talking to me about my weight. It's like, some people are allowed to give you feedback.
That's making me feel a little emotional, Ivanka, that you would change your behaviour on my account.
Oh, well. Well, you know.
Got a little... The other way of sort of getting trust quickly is you can lend it. You can vouch for someone or be vouched for. So that's something you always get. That's something I always prefer with a job now. Like, if someone just can vouch for me, then I don't have to do all that trust earning work, which is hard work. Like, it's a lot of and it's kind of fun going like, look what I did. I delivered this enormous thing. Now I want this amount of trust. Now you're just going to let me do what I'm doing. Like, so, you know, going to Hong Kong for 3 weeks, banging out all this stuff, like everything they thought of, I was like, oh, I think I can put that in, or at least try. And then that meant for the next like 3 months I was working from home and just able to kind of keep my own schedule and still deliver, because, you know, I can deliver this stuff, but, you know, but it's hard work, that kind of initial, as we said, you know, it's you kind of have to put a lot more effort in initially. But if someone's, and that was actually with a recommendation as well, so I don't know, maybe I'm just insecure. But
I think even if the trust was lent to get you in the door, you still have to justify.
Well, now I guess you owe this other person as well. Yeah. So, you know, either way, maybe there's more pressure.
You don't want to let anybody down.
Yeah.
It's like, because a lot of I find it, I had to fill in a form the other day. I'm going to potentially be doing some government contracts, and it's all of it is like 2 days here, 3 days there, 1 day there. And the amount of form filling in I've had to do is just to get, you know, prove that I am who I say I am, and the people I'm actually getting the work through have worked with me since about 2000, so 5-6 years. So I was like, oh my God, this is what it must be like if you have to apply for jobs all the time, or
reapply for your own job. It's like, you work with me. Why, you know, there's something I
that's
see
the
sometimes.
Redundancy scenario. Yeah, awful. It's like I get.
like, why can't you just run everything on trust? Maybe we can kind
Well,
of unpick that.
this
Like, it's obviously there for a reason, but it's
this has reminded me very much of the conversation I was having last week with the friend I met for breakfast before I came to see you to record the podcast, and we were talking about he's in a fortunate position in life where he's actually being called in as an expert to inform some of the Brexit negotiations. And so we had this interesting conversation about the fact that basically at the moment we're kind of trading immigration for trade or immigration control for trade. So there is a core population of the United Kingdom that wants to see immigration controlled, whatever it is necessarily they think that means. And really, truthfully, the only way to control immigration is to issue us all with ID cards, or we'll all have to go and report to our local police station, because, one of the glorious things about living in the United Kingdom has always been that instead of having 55 rubber stamps, you sign your name and you are who you say you are, because, that's what there is. There has been this sort of operating value of trust. Now, in all these other countries where foreign people live, everyone has identity cards, and they have to prove who they say they are all the time. And, it's that sort of how I would far rather, really, if the expense, the inconvenience, all of this of having to prove who you are all the time everywhere is actually just to control I don't know what the percentage of illegal immigrants is in this country, but I'd imagine it's reasonably low. You have to get here for starters, and we're surrounded by sea.
I actually kind of like the idea of an identity card, just because I think there's a lot of confusion, and it just kind of like puts me on edge in a lot of situations. But also I saw that, in the housing department, in my experience of, working in the government, it seemed like identity was a huge problem, and they were just always fighting with this fact that there was no unified identity across the different systems or offices. So that it just meant, people were, and people will, and I know people that do exploit every single loophole and thing that they can in order to just kind of get on the housing ladder and do these things. But you don't want to be treating people like they're lying to you all the time, but then you sort of have to after a certain point. But then you've got I'd kind of prefer to see at least some sort of, I think, like an ID card with a number, but
and a lot of the problem we've got with systems at the moment, things like new universal credit and stuff, is people need an address in order to apply for benefits. It's like, I had this whole, an address is a very difficult thing. I tweeted, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or something, that a link to a street link thing where you can report a rough sleeper if you're worried about them. And because it was very cold, and I was tweeting and I used the phrase rough sleeper, and then somebody mansplained at me that he said, surely you mean homeless? And I was like, no, actually I mean rough sleeper. And he went, no, by using the phrase rough sleeper, you're diminishing they haven't got a home. I'm like, there are a lot of people in this country that are homeless but have a roof, but they're just in a temporary accommodation that has no longevity, all this other stuff. And it's like, but if you are homeless, rough sleeping or not, at the moment, everything to do with proving who you are is attached to a physical address.
Right.
And actually, the nice thing about having an ID card would be that it would be more about your number, less about where you live.
No, it's true. I personally, I think you could solve a lot if you just gave everyone a number and that was how you accessed the benefits of the state. And I think, I don't know.
So, but that is a trust. That is a trust issue.
And it's exactly. It's all about trust.
In the absence of ID cards, we've got now this UK Verify project, which is this whole, if you've logged into anything online, you can, that's governmental, to prove who you are, you can log into a third party like the post office or Experian, and then they ask you a bunch of questions. And so sort of the owning of your identity has been given to some other enterprise.
It's like an open ID thing.
Yeah, but not really. It's not open. I don't think it's open standards. But anyway, it's just proving who you are is really tricky.
Yeah.
It really is, especially online.
And like, I mean, at least if there should be enough it should be difficult enough that even if you can change your identity, that's going to be, you got to kind of commit to it. And then I think that's okay. As long as you can't have 6 different identities on the boil at any one time, I think that's something to be careful of. Although I guess like facial recognition technology is it's pretty mature now, isn't it? Like you could probably...
I can't get into Nick's phone.
Fake. Not even with a photo, not even with the bust of his head you've had commissioned.
Apparently, there's a thing where you have to have your eyes open because, this is the story I heard, girls have been, and this way round is the way I've heard the story, it's like women have been like holding the phone up to their sleeping boyfriend's face to try and get into their phone. I don't know if that's a real story.
No, it's true. But that's, it's one of the things Apple... I mean, obviously, if you could just unlock anyone's phone if they're just like napping. So they've got to make sure that that's not possible. Or dead. Well, dead's probably is useful for that, but you can open their eyes then. Just prop their eyes open, scan, get in, reset the passwords.
So what I have to do is pick up his phone, pull a face, then it gives me the PIN option, then I get in. Because obviously I don't know the phone.
Why? You know your husband. I like, my phone is my, it's sacred. No, there's nothing I'm particularly hiding, but like yeah.
No, it's funny. It's no. I got to know all the pins, all the logins. I mean, it's reciprocal.
Maybe we'll get there one day. Maybe we'll get there one day. I have I don't know if this is a common thing, but sometimes I worry that I have a poisonous habit of testing trust. If someone seems to trust me, then I'll kind of be looking for the boundaries of how much they'll trust me. This has more been in like personal relationships. I think if you sort of don't necessarily feel like you're a good person, and then someone seems to think you're a good person, you might, or your kind of ideas of what makes you a good person. I think I have a habit of wanting to test the kind of edge cases. Is that sociopathic? Is that?
I think that might be more to do with betrayal than it is to do with sociopathy. When you said testing trust, I thought you were going to say testing how much you can trust another person.
No. I mean testing their trust in me.
No, I don't do that. I don't think. I
think day to day that means like once I relax with people, like work as well, I'll kind of slip into the family mode, which is kind of like quite negative mostly, like quite because I sort of once I feel like I've earned the trust, then now I can just relax and be horrible.
I think you do like to test people sometimes, but there's payoffs.
I think it's. I mean, there must be some reason for it. I don't know what though. Like, I think why not? Again, it's kind of like when we were talking about contracts. I'm saying like people test. It's better if you can be in the middle. I don't know why I can't be in the middle with trust as well. Like I'm kind of testing the contractual boundaries as well sometimes, and that's not. Yeah, I don't know. It's because I think I kind of want to, like, I guess I am fixated on complexity a lot of the time, and I'm interested in it. So I kind of want to check that the kind of little narrow, winding, moral grey areas that we can, understand each other on as well. I don't know.
But I think this is just about relationship building, and it's the same in teams, it's the same in personal relationships, it's the same between organisations. There are actually academic papers and research around this. Is the sort of testing a relationship is a valid way of making it better.
Right.
It's like they have these theories about teams storming, norming, dorming, whatever the words are. But there's kind of like a good team goes through being able to shout at each other and having a row, or having a disagreement with a friend actually makes you. Yeah. Doesn't necessarily have to be shouting at each other like you and I have been known to do in the past. Not everyone needs to be quite that explosive, but a little bit of, oh, I'm sorry, I think I might have let you down, or you've let me down, or I don't agree, or whatever.
Maybe I'm looking for that. Maybe that's why I kind of want to have that row, because then I know that I feel safer, you know? Like, if it's never been tested, then you don't really know if they're still going to be there for you if you do kind of make a fuck up.
I think if there's no test, I don't understand how the relationship can progress.
Yeah, me neither. I think,
if you think about, like, Nick and I really early on did that trek to Mount Everest base camp.
Madness.
Like, we'd known each other less than 3 months.
Yeah.
That was a massive test.
I did that test and it failed, and that was it wasn't climbing a mountain, but it was being somewhere, for 3 weeks with someone in another country who we'd been together for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And when it that failed the test pretty badly and left me pretty broken for a while.
But you know what I mean? Like, you do have to push the boundaries. You do have to test, but it doesn't necessarily have to be destructive, I think, is the.
Yeah, I mean, how can you test the boundaries without how can you do it without it being a sort of slightly painful? I mean, I guess yours went well. Your trek went well. It was hard, but that didn't mean it had to be bad, I guess.
But that's point, even right? If you think about when we're going to use canonical, when we did that first Some Hands presentation, and you made the video, and Otto, Marcus, Alejandro and me stayed up till 4:00 in the morning doing the slides, making sure they were, that we were all testing and trusting each other, that we were going to put all the bits together, and ultimately everyone put their trust in me to stand up and pull it off.
Yeah.
But we set a bar quite high, and then we all had to chip in. We all had to contribute, and if any one of us hadn't, we wouldn't have pulled it off.
Yeah, we got away with that one, didn't we? That was good. You just reminded me of a story of I used to live with this drug dealer. Well, actually, 2 drug dealers back in Brixton, and I remember one of them telling me a story about how he'd met with his supplier to buy his drugs, and they just did it completely kind of trustfully, and he would just went here's the money, here's the thing. Cool. And he said, they were both that's the way to do it. If you just kind of choose to trust the other person and just do the deal and just kind of get it done, it's brilliant. He was saying that. What do you think? But to trust someone is, it's a decision. Sometimes, I mean, the sort of that sort of presentation, it was probably 50% setting our own bar high, 50% necessity. But in some situations, you always have a choice whether to trust the other person or how much to trust them. And if you can give someone an opportunity to live up to something, can't you? So you can say, right, I'm going to trust you with this much. With I'm going to give you kind of more than you might expect, and then we'll kind of get to a closer relationship quicker. Why is blagging okay? I'm not a blagger because I do feel I don't know. But maybe I should be more blaggy, or just allow myself to embrace that idea. But I just want to be as honest as possible.
But I think that's partly because when I was talking about you talked about you've got to trust yourself first.
Yeah.
Then you got people who trust themselves a little bit too much.
Yes, well,
it's cocky, arrogant, that kind of thing, and which is actually a very negative.
Yeah, when someone will just say anything, and then you know them for a little bit, you're like, okay, I basically can't believe anything you say, but are you just lying to me, or do you actually believe this? But either way, you're either painfully not self-aware, or you're just lying to me.
Or you think I'm a fucking idiot, which is that's what always gets me. I'm like, you either, if I give you the benefit of the doubt, I'm going to say that you're not aware that you're doing this, or you actually think I'm stupid enough to believe this shit. That's my thing. I'm like, either way, it's not reflecting well on our relationship. God, who did that to me? Because that happens in a work context to me every so often. People say things to me. I'm like, really? Do you really think? Is that,
Did I tell you that story about did I tell it on the podcast? This guy that was working for me that was pretending to be on the phone?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Like, just lying to my face. I don't know what episode that was in.
I don't want to talk to you.
This guy just
I'm
like,
on
he
the
didn't want
phone.
to talk to me. He was just literally pretending to be on the... I could hear the dial tone. Like, it was ridiculous.
Oh, dear.
So, shall I tell you about my fifth law of physics theory?
Please do tell me about your fifth law of physics theory.
Yeah, no, I sort of started this as a graphic novel as well, but I haven't really managed to finish it. But I have got a website of Michael's unfinished projects that you can sort of see how far I got up to. It was called The Fifth Theory. This is what I was going to kind of get to in the end. But so physics, if you have studied it, you will know that there are four main forces in the universe that we talk about. The electromagnetic force, which is basically how most stuff works, gravitational force, and then getting the weak nuclear and the strong nuclear force are the other two, which kind of explain atoms and things. And I had this sort of like revelation of the other thing that makes things happen is trust, because that's a force that allows people to cooperate and do things together, that if it didn't exist, we would just be nothing. Like, the human race just wouldn't work. You have to trust someone in order to be able to do things. And I think that was this was a conclusion I reached. I think it was big to me because I went through a lot of life not trusting anyone on anything. Like, there wasn't enough anyone could do to kind of make me trust them. Like, my kind of scale was kind of fucked up. So I realized at that point that, like, I have to choose to trust someone. There is no level of proof that's going to get me there. So that was a kind of big thing. I was like, yeah, and then you can actually like live, and then the world works, and then you can build civilizations, and then you can create amazing technologies, but you can only do that if you have this force of trust between people. I've actually, like, since having that theory, I've heard this described more as shared belief. By people sharing beliefs, you can achieve amazing things. Like, money is a belief that, if I give you this money, then you'll get it, it will be returned. But that's something everyone's chosen to believe. And it's not a fact of the universe in any way. It's not a law of physics in any way. But yeah, like, if physics creates conscious communicating entities, ultimately, for interesting reasons as well. Have you heard this thing about why the purpose of life? There's a really good Minute Physics video on this.
No.
The purpose of life is to find innovative ways of increasing the entropy of the universe. The universe is going towards entropy. The basics, things can explode and kind of distribute, and then you get all this energy locked in, say, like coal and underground and in special hard to reach places. So that's why life has evolved, in order to extract the energy from those hard to reach places, and then it comes. So it's almost like the purpose of human life is to mine all the fossil fuels to exhaustion.
So that, and then there's nothing left, and then humans retire from the planet because all the energy is being released.
Well, the heat death of the universe, we all die, everything dies,
Yeah.
and it's just a kind of grey, even, cold.
It's like a dial tone. Brilliant.
Yeah. Sorry, that got
That's jolly.
like, bigger, but no, but that doesn't mean that's like, in terms of physics, a good explanation for why animals and life exist. But it doesn't mean we have to just give up on everything. Like, well, we are smart enough to realize that, we can do better than just strip everything and die out immediately. Like, we'll keep it going a bit longer with innovations.
Or while we're doing it, just contemplate the meaning of life on podcasts. we can't function without trust.
No, we get nowhere. We just...
And I think, you know, we've trust is now coming up in the context as well of things like this whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica fiasco and everything. It's like, why should we have to go through life watching out for people stealing stuff that really, you know, I think part of it is that things that didn't previously have value now have value. So you used to walk around on, you know, in the air, in the world, talking to your friends, and there was no record of it other than maybe somebody gossiping about you. But now that it's recorded, it suddenly has value. It's something that can be captured and sold. People can only betray your trust on things that are of value to you. They can steal things from you. They can, you know, if I don't care, the reason you calling me flaky upset me is that I don't consider flakiness to be one of my core values. If you know, it's like you're taking away something. I consider myself to be a trustworthy person. So if you tell me I'm flaky, I'm like, oh, now you know, it's upset me because it's making me question who I am. Or, you know, which is a bad example to use in the context of betrayal, because that's not what it was at all. But it's like, but in a way, I'm betraying your trust by being flaky. And it's so, you know, people can only betray your trust on something you care about. You know, like I've got friends that are trustworthily late all the time.
Yeah.
And then you just tell them, and I happen to be one of those people that I don't really care. I just tell them to be somewhere an hour earlier than I really need them, and that's fine. That's my that's my correction.
Well, it's when they're unpredictable. Like I have like a late friend, but he can either be 3 hours late or like an hour early. Like he'll be like, right, I'm going to be really good. And he'll get there like an hour early, and I'm like, this is just as bad as being really late. I know you're trying, but I am still in my pajamas, you know.
I mean, it's just the basis of any brand building, isn't it?
And there's a predictability. No, I don't know if that's... Yeah,
I think trust is being able to predict. I think that is an important part of it. It's like...
Yeah.
It really is. You know, it's like, if I could... It's kind of what it, you know...
It's what it is, isn't it?
What it is. It's like...
It's making things predictable that are implicitly very difficult to predict.
And even if that... even if the trust or the prediction is, if I ask you for help, you will help me, you know, and I've never had to ask you before, but I trust that you will, that's still... It's still down to predictability.
And then if you can predict, you can build things. Like if you can't make any predictions, then you can't put anything together. Like, I mean, it's all kind of fictions we have in our brains, isn't it? It's all just, we model the world and we model other people, and we hope. We're disappointed when trust is betrayed, or we miscalculate it, because it means that our whole kind of constructed reality has now got a flaw that needs to be reconciled. And in the same way that lying is just people willfully constructing alternative realities in order to, you know, manipulate you or kind of get away with things. I mean, fine if you want to do this, but it seems like a lot of hard work. It's making me think, like, and there's nothing worse than watching someone lie. Breaking Bad is horrible to watch, those scenes where you know that Walter White is lying in great detail. That's not good television to me, like 15 minutes of watching someone lie. It's just like, stop. When's this going to stop? There's something so horrible about that feeling.
But I think the most lying I ever did was me and my brother lying to my parents about stuff when we were littler. Like, where's my pen? I don't know. Do you know where Mummy's pen is? Oh, I don't know where it is. It's like the fact that we broke it and hid it. It's like, no.
I think my moral standards with my siblings are very different to my moral standards with other people.
It's quite difficult to talk about lying without really exposing your vulnerability on a podcast.
Yeah, no, well, we don't.
It's like, you know, that's I think that's for me
we can trust each other, but I don't know if we trust the internet.
No, exactly. I think as well, sometimes fessing up is done to make you feel better. And actually, if you fuck something up, sometimes you've just got to live with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's yours. You fucked up. You deal with it. Don't, explaining your fuck up to other people is just making them feel bad now, and they didn't do anything. They just, so I'm a bit...
No, I get it. And like making your problem, sometimes you're just making your problem someone else's problem. And actually, I just find that with people that aren't trustworthy as well. They want to make a lot of their problems your problem.
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know if that actually is a spectrum or if I'm just completely just hearing words and making random connections. But it just did make me think about that. But I thought I just had, like, the thing with the internet and trusting the internet is what I've learned is about the internet is you can trust it to do anything that it can do, anything that can be done, someone will be doing it. And so to the point of, like, I used to think, oh, well, no one's ever going to do that. And now I'm like, no, it's possible. Someone's going to do it. It's where you get these spam emails with no links in them, like bits of poetry. Someone's just doing it because they can do it. And you just go like, why would anybody ever do this? Just the internet, just because no, it's just possible, so some twat's gonna do it for who knows why. So you just have to just sort of assume that anything you can think of, someone's up to it.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why probably putting a podcast out saying too much is a very bad idea.
Yeah.
But probably why people are grateful when you are quite, sort of open as well.
Yeah.
So, because I don't mind my sister always says, you're just so public with stuff that I would never say in public. And I don't give a shit really about a lot of this stuff. So I don't think anyone can hurt me with it anymore. So
I have been thinking about this week because we've started to get feedback.
Yeah.
And I think on the subject of, if we go with the narrative that we came up with this idea of doing this podcast at Meaning Conference last year, and we did it off the back of wanting to do something positive in the world.
Yeah.
If we're to engage any sort of meaningful conversation with anybody, we've got to start by being honest.
Right.
And I think, or open at least. In order to be trustworthy as sources of people to talk to, people to raise things with, like, Stuart's now going to get mentioned every week. Stuart sent us an email going, this is not how you change people's minds. It's like, okay, that's not how we change people's minds, but we need to have a conversation. We need to start by being honest about what we think and what our intentions are.
Yeah, we're trying to build some trust, aren't we? Because we want to try some difficult stuff. You can't try a difficult, complicated solution until you've built up a bit of trust. No. So kind of that's what we're doing. Although we're at episode 21 now, so I don't know. Does at some point does this start to? I mean, like not that the 21 is a special number.
21?
I mean, like yeah. At what point do we start? Maybe we do need it like an ideas segment in the podcast or something where, like, what do we want to try, like, where we start trying to actively think about that, because I'm ready to. We talked a bit this week about social enterprise, is that the term? Social enterprises. So I was looking into, like, companies that do that and just looking into, like, what would I probably be better off given my motivations setting up stuff I want to do as a charity or something, and like how can I don't know. How can I start doing something? Hopefully we can start doing something, hopefully more than us. I kind of want to bring people into something. I just don't know what that is yet. So I think we should that's what this podcast should start trying to. What's our grand plan?
Yeah, we need to start working on the grand plan.
We need some Elon Musk style grand plans. Grand podcasts, we can have a grand library and then some grand plans. I like that, actually. Grand plans. Because they will be if we come up with them.
Well, of course.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like it, give us a review on iTunes. Make sure you're subscribed, obviously. And come to our website, grandpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter @podcastgrand. Where can we find you, Ivanka?
I'm at Ivanka on Twitter.
And that's the main one. And I'm a loser. My website is michaelforestmusic.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Michael Forrest. And is there anything else people could do for us?
This week I have found a Listener's Choice Awards that is going on the British Podcast Awards.
Yes.
So if you go to britishpodcastawards.com/vote, search for, if you just type Ivanka in the search box, we come up straight away, and then you vote for us, and then we might win an award, which would be amazing.
And then we'll talk about it and we'll get some listeners. It's going to be amazing. It's going to take off.
Yeah, it'll be brilliant, because that's what we want, lots of listeners. And tell your friends to listen to us and tell them to vote for us, whether they listened or not.
Yeah, please.
Just tell everybody to vote, because that would be marvellous. And
help
tell
us
your
get
friends.
our first award.
I just think that it'd be really nice if you voted for us and we got lots of votes, and then more people get to hear about the podcast. That's what I'm after.
And more people contribute, more people ask questions, and we start to expand
And
our
then
sphere
and our
of,
grand plans become reality.
Yes.
And they become good, because
Yes.
enough people are there to question them and help us make them good.
Exactly.
Good grand, because they need to be grand plans which are good, not just generic grand plans.
Yes, the danger of being opinionated on a podcast, I've noticed this in other podcasts, that as soon as someone sort of says something you don't really agree with, it sort of like starts to erode your sort of enjoyment of it away. You're like, oh, I like it, but I don't really agree with that view. But that's why we want feedback, because we'd rather you told us and like we had the conversation than you just kind of switched off, because we, as we keep trying to say, is like we want to evolve our beliefs in order to like, you know, get closer to something that we can do, you know, broadly. And I'm quite an insular person most of the time, so I will have quite specific ideas. I mean, I know I also am very defensive about criticism.
Please give us feedback, but only very kindly.
No. So what I'm doing is I'm reneging on that thing, because I would rather you stayed listening, knowing that I'm going to listen if something genuinely like kind of grated on you, than you just kind of abandoned it and decided you didn't like us / me.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening, and do subscribe all your friends.
And come back next week.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.